Time is running out. A powerful spell book from one of the most powerful wizards could fall into the wrong hands. Can Matt and the Guardians find it before it's too late? Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter, and today we're going to be taking a look at... Yes, this is The Guardians of Light, Book 2, Shadow Apprentice, and this is by James West. It was published in 2015. Now this is the second book, as I just said, of a series of books, and this is a self-published book, as was Book 1. We've done a review of Book 1, and I was curious again, is this the whole self-publishing thing? Is it a good thing? Is it not a good thing? I've self-published a book, The Legends of Grimace Ironblood, so I kind of know the trials and tribulations that you can go through, the editing process, or have you got an editor? All of that, the marketing, etc, etc. So I was curious to find out that, somebody that's gone to all the trouble and effort to actually write a novel, and also then to get it published and presumably put their own money into publishing it, would then want to write a second one. And I was curious to know if the writing's improved, how the story's going. So I thought I'd take a look. Now this is a young adult book, and again, that's a whole curious thing about labels and categories. But without further ado, let's delve into the review in further detail. Guardians of Light, Book 2, what is the setup? Well, yes, it does follow on, but not straight away from Book 1. There is a bit of a hiatus. What happened? I don't want to give any spoilers away, but Matt Lumen, he has discovered that he's got special powers, that he's not necessarily as normal as a human being should be, and he has been taken under the Guardian of Light's wing. They live in a big manor house. It's kind of like the X-Men, that was the feeling I got from it. So there's these group of teenagers, and they each have their little bit of special ability. They each are Guardians of Light, and they are opposed the Order of Shadows. There is this evil group called the Order of Shadows, and they are wanting to do evil things. I don't want to give too much spoilers away. So the Order of Shadows, they are back, and this time there is an apprentice. So you've got like the lead baddie, if you like, and there's an apprentice that kind of makes an appearance throughout this book. Again, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but the whole thing revolves around a diary, a diary that has the location of a probably the most powerful spell book in this universe. So, because the diary is from a powerful warlock called Dante, and the spell book is also by Dante. And so, because it's so powerful, they decided that it needed to be hidden. And the diary, there's clues in this diary of where this book is going to be. Now, you can imagine both sides want this spell book, because if they get the spell book, then they will have the upper hand. So really, the whole book is all about trying to locate this spell book. There are various themes that run through this book. There's loyalty, and in this way it's pure loyalty. There's a kind of innocence about this loyalty, I guess because they're teenagers. They probably haven't had too much experience, I might be wrong, and this is generalizations really, of betrayal. But so they have that natural instinct of just trusting everybody, that you just automatically trust somebody. No matter what, you're going to be loyal to them. If you decide that you're going to be friends with somebody, you're friends. If you're in the same football team, you stick together, you've got each other's back. So obviously if you're part of the Guardians of Light, then yeah, you've got loyalty. And equally though, the Order of Shadows, there's loyalty amongst those as well. But there is also betrayal. If you have loyalty, there's an opportunity for betrayal. Now, obviously, if you swore that you are going to be loyal to something, then that is a personal commitment. That's your soul you're binding your soul to this commitment. So in order to betray and go against your own self, it's got to be for a really good reason. Obviously, there's a multitude of reasons why somebody would want to betray somebody. And I guess the most powerful ones are more to do with emotions, emotional connections rather than money. So the book does explore this concept of loyalty and betrayal. That runs all the way through the book. Then we have love, and this, because they are teenagers, it's kind of first love, you know, it's that coming of age love, it's that sort of passion, that excitement. And again, that is tied in with loyalty, because obviously, you know, when you're young, you kind of feel, yes, you know, the world's going to be amazing, it's going to be brilliant, and I'm falling in love, and we're going to be living together forever, and we're going to be, you know, husband and wife, or whatever, you know, husband and husband, you know, female, female, you know, it's all that love's there. We're going to be, it's beautiful, it's lovely. So you can be a little bit naive. So there's that sort of naive love, of coming of age love, that runs through as well. And also, the book does a very good job of showing how awkward it can be. So obviously, if you fancy someone, I mean, and this isn't just for teenagers as well, if you fancy somebody and, you know, you might be a little bit shy and you might blush when you're near them, and you find you can't actually talk properly when you're around them, it does a very good job of covering that type of love as well. There's also the theme of identity that runs through this, and again, I don't want to give too much spoilers away, but there's a nice piece in the book where Matt learns more about his identity, because in book 1 we realise that he's lost his memory, and he's got these blanks in his memory that he doesn't quite know who he is, he doesn't know who his parents are, and so he's confused, and obviously he starts feeling lonely and isolated, and so the Guardians of Light, you know, show him the way, if you like. They are his new friends, his new family. So the theme of identity crops up, and the growing pains, especially, I mean, that's just ordinarily, even if you've had a relatively nice upbringing, and, you know, you haven't had a memory loss, you're still going to have growing pains. So again, you've got that extra layer in this book as well. There's a lot to like about this novel. There's good pacing, it zips along, it's very snappy. There's flowing sentences as well, is a good way to describe them. They're not overly complex, and I think that's a good thing. Remember, this is a young adult novel, and therefore it does have an appeal for that young adult. It feels very much like I'm watching telly, in the fact that, you know, there's lots of quick scenes that happen, and that's a good thing, because it's it can be a bit of a page turner, because you kind of want to know if they're going to discover the diary before the other group of people. And it has that, for older viewers, there was a TV program that I loved, it was the Red Hand Gang, which was a group of teenagers that kind of solved crimes, and that I used to love that. And so it had that feel of it, and I guess a modern equivalent would be the X-Men, you know, where you're a group of superheroes, and it has that superhero feel to it rather than fantasy. Yes, there's magic in there, there's elements, the fantasy elements are, there's magic in this world, there is, but it's urban, it's set in the real day, every day, but obviously there are magic that kind of filters in. It's rare though, it's, you know, only certain people have magic, it's not like all human has magic and it's known, it's very well hidden. And there's also these creatures that appear, they can, and there's teleportation that happens as well. So there's a bit of sci-fi thrown in there as well for good measure. But it does have, to me, a bit more of a superhero feel to it. The writing does feel more confident in this book from book 1. As I say, the flow of it is better, and the pacing is a lot better. It does zip through. The characters are likeable, and you do want to root for them. Whether or not you totally get immersed in the characters is another thing. Whether or not you really do emotionally connect with them is another thing. But you certainly want them to win. You certainly, there's no ambiguity there. You do want the characters, the good characters, to come through. And it does have that, and I guess that has that comic book feel to it as well, where there's very fast pacing, there are emotional touch points within the book, so it's not just all about action and magic and fighting, but the ratio is more to do with the pace and the story rather than characterization. But that said, they're not necessarily flat characters. They could be developed more, and it was nice in this book that they were, because there was as I say, there was a nice moment for Matt when he started to find out a little bit more about himself. So there, as I say, there's a lot to like about this book. There are with self-publishing books, it's interesting. I have self-published, but I had an editor that went through my book as well, because I always think it's good to get someone else's opinion, because when you start writing, you get really close to your work, and then you can't see the wood for the trees. In terms of grammar and Typos, I only found one, which was pretty good, which is, for self-publishing, it can be just that person doing everything: proofreading, editing, checking for typos, that kind of thing, the graphic design, choosing the image for the cover, or even designing the cover, drawing the cover. So it can be very much a one-person band, and it's very easy then for things to slip. And then it's all to do with skill level, because you could be a writer that isn't very good at grammar, but then you could give it to a proofreader and your publisher, and they will polish it up for you. So if you're going to be doing it yourself, you really do have to make sure that the grammar is spot on and it is pretty good, so it doesn't put you off, because there's nothing worse than if you read something and all the grammar's all over the place. You will just put the book down. But saying that, there are a few things that could be improved, and one of my biggest things was the show and not tell rule. For example, on page 40, there's one of the characters goes through the security. They were trying to get into a museum and they're going through the security. And the security is they're searching people's bags. And one of the characters goes through and then looks round and then tells the audience what happens to the other character when they're getting searched. So we're seeing it from a distance. We're being told it. It's being reported to us, rather than how about actually we are going through the security ourselves. So it's coming from the point of view of the person being searched, because they have the diary, and they actually, if the security guards find them with the diary, then obviously the game's up. So you wanted that build up of tension. You wanted to be there. You wanted to feel that sweat pouring down your brow. Will they don't look in the bag, don't look in that secret compartment, will they find it? You want that sort of tension built up. Now, if you're reporting that and you're telling the audience that, the tension is weaker. So I would say that you need to be showing and not telling. That's advice for any writer at all in any genre. Also, there was a little bit too much explaining of things. You've got to trust your audience, your readership, that they're intelligent people. That they don't need everything spoon-fed to them. An example of that was page 23, where I'm just going to read a little bit where it says, I think she's in her room. Why? So the question's there, why? Why do you want to know where this character is? And then it says, Penelope ran after him, confused about what had just happened. Well, we know she's confused because she said, why? Why are you asking me this? So it could have just been, Penelope ran after him, confused. You don't need the extra words about just what happened. Now, I know that sounds very petty and I'm picking up something really pernickety, but if you have that constantly through a novel, then it all builds up. There's a lot of editing you could be doing there to make sure things are snappy and things are you only want the words, you want it to be really trim and tight, so everything feels tight and the reader doesn't get sort of fatigue when they're reading extra things that are being explained to them, because like, well, yeah, I know that, if they're confused, I know why they were confused. It just happened. I know that. I've read that. And I sometimes struggled. Sometimes I thought, has the author concentrated on the wrong bits to tell the audience? So a writer has to make the choice of what bits to tell of the story and what bits to leave out. For example, you could have a character going to sleep, and then they wake up the next morning, and you haven't described anything, and the character goes to sleep early one morning the next day, and you've missed out their sleep. And those are character choices, those are writer choices in order for the story to move on. And I always think, when I write, is this interesting? Am I boring myself? Will I bore the reader? And now, that doesn't mean that everything has to be action, no, because obviously you describe a character's emotions and, you go through all that, and it's interesting. Ian Fleming, who wrote James Bond, he spent, I think it was 3 pages describing what Bond was eating for lunch. Now, I'm not necessarily a foodie, but I found it fascinating because he actually wove in bits around. You learn a bit more about the character of James Bond through his choices of the meal that he was eating. So again, it doesn't have to be, you have to make those decisions. It doesn't have to be all action about that's what you put in. No, but it has to be interesting and entertaining. And I think maybe there could have been certain scenes that I thought, well, I don't think that's necessarily necessary for the story and further development of the characters. There was an emotional connection to the characters, just about. There was just enough. And for me, there was one bit, there was a plot disappointment. There was a big build-up about getting the diary. We've got to get this diary from the museum. Both sides wanted to do it. We need to break into the diary. And then when one side did get the diary, the other side just went, oh, well, we'll download it from the website. It's in digital format. And I thought, what? How can they do that? They can't do that. You've just spent up a long time building up, this is the diary, we have to get it. And then suddenly just someone downloads it from the internet. I felt that was a bit of a cheat. And I think that was a plot device where, because the author wanted both sides to be moving in on the diary. Unless I've misread that bit. I might have misread that bit. It was brief, but I don't think it was. I felt there could have been a better way for them to actually have had the other side find out about where the spell book is, so they can both, build up to a climax to the actual novel. Overall, I did enjoy it, and certainly if I was a teenager, I think I would love this book. I'm not necessarily the right readership for this, but I will say that the writing has improved from book one. The book one was pretty good anyway, but book two, yes, you can tell that the author is more confident with it. He knows the characters more, and he does feel like he knows where he wants to go with the series now. He's setting the scene for the next book, and I say it would appeal to the target audience, which is young adult, which I guess is anywhere from 12 to 15, 16, maybe 17. And the author is finding his voice again, not again, but a bit more of his own voice as opposed to just kind of generically writing. So I would recommend carrying on with this. If you haven't read book one, check that out. You can, I think it's available as an ebook as well, so you can download that, or you could buy the printed version. And so if you have invested in book one, I think you'll enjoy book two as well. That's Guardians of the Light, book two. The Guardians of Light, book two, Shadow Apprentice by James West. Hopefully you enjoyed that, gave you a bit of a feel, a bit of a flavour of what this book's about. Remember, we have done a book one review, and we've also got lots of other fantasy book reviews as well. And we've also done a how to write fantasy. I wrote a fantasy book myself, as you know, The Legends of Grimland's Ironblood, and I thought it'd be nice to document my, writing experience, the sort of mistakes I made, and the success I made as well. It was my way of passing on knowledge to you fellow imps. Remember to subscribe to our channel, but until next time, thank you so much for watching. Remember to keep it unreal, especially if you're a Guardian of Light.